The California sun beat down on the parking lot of Folsom State Prison as Camille Laurent adjusted her makeup in the rearview mirror one last time. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from pure excitement. After 3 long years of weekly visits, countless letters, and unwavering faith, Lucas Moreau was finally coming home. She had promised herself she would look perfect for this moment, and she had delivered. Her hair was styled immaculately, her dress was new, and her smile was genuine. At 35 years old, Camille had built an empire from nothing. She was the proud owner of Belle Mode Boutique, a thriving fashion business that had expanded from a small online shop to a brick-and-mortar store in downtown Sacramento. She sold everything from designer handbags to vintage jewelry, and her Instagram following had grown to over 50,000 loyal customers who admired not just her products, but her story. A single mother who had clawed her way to success, Camille represented the American dream in its purest form. Her 17-year-old daughter, Emma, sat beside her in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone with the typical disinterest of a teenager. Emma had never been particularly close to Lucas. She remembered him from before his incarceration, but those memories were vague and tinged with discomfort. Her mother's devotion to this man had always puzzled her, but she had learned not to question it. Camille's love for Lucas was absolute, and nothing Emma said could change that. The prison gates opened and Camille's heart leaped. She grabbed her phone and started recording, wanting to capture every second of this reunion. She had planned everything meticulously. There would be a surprise party at her home, complete with decorations, catered food, and a brand new wardrobe waiting for Lucas. She had even arranged for a 2-night stay at a luxury hotel in San Francisco, just the two of them, to reconnect after years of separation. Lucas emerged from the gates looking thinner than she remembered, his face hardened by years behind bars. He was 41 now, and the time inside had aged him in ways that went beyond the physical. His eyes scanned the parking lot until they found her, and then something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion. Camille jumped out of the car and ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "Welcome home, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Lucas held her tightly, but his embrace felt different somehow, stiffer, more mechanical. Camille pushed the thought away. He just needed time to adjust. That was all. The drive back to Sacramento was filled with Camille's excited chatter. She told him about the new house she had purchased, a 3-bedroom property in a safe neighborhood, with a 2-car garage and a spacious backyard. She talked about the business, about Emma's progress in school, about the life they would build together now that he was free. Lucas mostly listened, offering occasional grunts of acknowledgement, his eyes fixed on the passing landscape. When they arrived at the house, Camille had arranged for Lucas's father and a few close friends to be there. Balloons decorated the living room, and a banner reading, "Welcome Home," hung across the fireplace. Lucas smiled for the first time that day, a small, tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He hugged his father, shook hands with the friends, and accepted their congratulations with polite gratitude. That night, alone in the hotel room she had booked for them, Camille finally had Lucas to herself. She had imagined this moment countless times during his incarceration, fantasizing about the intimacy they would share, the conversations they would have. But as they lay in the king-sized bed, Lucas seemed distant, his mind elsewhere. When she tried to initiate physical contact, he responded, but it felt obligatory rather than passionate. "Are you okay?" Camille asked softly, propping herself up on one elbow to look at him. Lucas stared at the ceiling, his jaw tight. "I'm fine," he said. "Just need time to adjust. It's been a long 3 years." Camille nodded, understanding, or at least trying to understand. She had read about the difficulties of reintegration after incarceration, the psychological toll, the struggle to adapt to normal life, the feelings of displacement. She would be patient. She would support him through this transition, just as she had supported him through everything else. 3 days after his release, they got married. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse, nothing fancy, but it meant everything to Camille. She wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of roses that Emma had reluctantly helped her pick out. Lucas wore a new suit that Camille had bought him, and he said his vows with the same mechanical precision he seemed to apply to everything now. Camille posted photos from the wedding on Instagram, captioning them with heart emojis and declarations of eternal love. Her followers flooded the comments with congratulations and well wishes. To the outside world, Camille Laurent had everything: a successful business, a beautiful daughter, and now a husband she had stood by through the worst of times. She was living proof that loyalty and love could conquer any obstacle. But behind the carefully curated Instagram posts and the smiling selfies, something was beginning to shift. Lucas had moved into Camille's house, but he hadn't found work. He spent most of his days sleeping or watching television, occasionally helping with minor household tasks but contributing nothing financially. Camille didn't mind at first. She had always been the provider, even before his incarceration, and she took pride in her ability to support them both. What bothered her more was the way Lucas looked at her sometimes. There was a coldness in his gaze, a resentment that he tried to hide but couldn't quite manage. When she talked about her business successes, he would nod absently, but she could sense his discomfort. When she posted photos of her latest fashion finds or celebrated reaching a new sales milestone, he would make small, cutting remarks disguised as jokes. "Must be nice being the boss," he said one evening as Camille counted the day's earnings at the kitchen table. His tone was light, but there was an edge to it that made her look up. "You could work with me if you want," she offered. "I could use help with inventory and shipping." Lucas's face darkened. "I'm not working for my wife," he said flatly. "I'm a man. I need to find my own thing." Camille didn't argue. She understood that his pride was wounded, that adjusting to being financially dependent on her was difficult for him. She would give him space, give him time. Eventually, he would find his footing, and things would get better. But things didn't get better. They got worse. The first time Lucas raised his voice at Camille was 2 weeks after the wedding. She had posted a photo on Instagram celebrating a particularly profitable day at Belle Mode Boutique, holding up a fan of $100 bills with a playful caption about being blessed. The post received hundreds of likes within minutes, and her followers filled the comments with praise and admiration. Lucas saw it while scrolling through his phone on the couch. His face contorted with rage so quickly that Camille barely had time to process what was happening. Before he was on his feet, shouting, "Do you have to broadcast everything?" he yelled, his voice echoing through the house. "Do you have to show the whole world how much money you're making while I'm sitting here with nothing?" Camille stood frozen in the kitchen, a dish towel still in her hands. "Lucas, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would upset you. I was just proud of the day's sales." "Proud," he repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. "You want everyone to know you're the one with the money. You want everyone to see that I'm useless." "That's not true," Camille protested, moving toward him with her hands raised in a placating gesture. "Baby, you're not useless. You just got out. You need time to adjust." Lucas turned away from her, his fists clenched at his sides. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more controlled, but somehow more menacing. "Delete it." Camille hesitated. The post was already performing well, and several potential customers had messaged her asking about products. But she saw the tension in Lucas's shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched, and she made a decision. She pulled out her phone and deleted the post. "There," she said softly. "It's gone." Lucas didn't respond. He grabbed his jacket and walked out of the house without another word. He didn't return until 3 in the morning, and when he did, he smelled like marijuana and alcohol. Camille pretended to be asleep. The pattern repeated itself over the following weeks. Camille would post something about her business or her life, and Lucas would react with anger and accusations. She began to censor herself, carefully curating her social media presence to avoid triggering his temper. She stopped posting photos of expensive purchases, stopped celebrating business milestones publicly, stopped showing the full picture of her success. But it wasn't enough. Lucas's jealousy had taken root, and it grew like a weed, choking out everything else. He started questioning where she went, who she talked to, why she needed to leave the house so often for business meetings. He accused her of having affairs with male customers, of using her business as a cover for infidelity. "I'm not cheating on you," Camille would say, her voice strained with exhaustion. "I love you. I've always been faithful to you." "Then why do you need to dress up so much?" Lucas would counter. "Why do you need to wear makeup and nice clothes to sell purses? Who are you trying to impress?" Emma watched these exchanges from the periphery, her teenage instincts telling her that something was very wrong. She tried to talk to her mother about it once, pulling her aside when Lucas was out of the house. "Mom, he's not good for you," Emma said carefully. "The way he talks to you, the way he treats you, it's not okay." Camille's response was immediate and defensive. "You don't understand, Emma. He's been through a lot. Prison changes people. He just needs time to heal." "It's been 2 months," Emma pointed out, "and he's getting worse, not better." "I can handle it," Camille insisted. "I love him, and he loves me. We'll get through this." But Lucas's behavior continued to deteriorate. He started going through Camille's phone when she was in the shower, reading her messages and checking her call logs. He demanded access to her business bank accounts, claiming he needed to feel like a partner in the relationship. When Camille hesitated, he accused her of hiding money from him. "I give you everything," Camille said, tears streaming down her face during one particularly heated argument. "I bought this house. I bought your clothes. I pay for everything. What more do you want from me?" "Respect," Lucas spat. "I want respect. I want to feel like a man in my own home." Camille tried everything to make him feel valued. She gave him access to one of her credit cards, hoping it would ease his insecurity about money. She started asking his opinion on business decisions, even when she already knew what she wanted to do. She stopped spending time with certain friends who Lucas claimed were bad influences. She even started lying to her family about how happy she was, maintaining the fiction that her marriage was perfect. Lucas's drug use escalated. He was smoking marijuana daily now, and Camille suspected he was using something stronger, though she couldn't prove it. His mood swings became more unpredictable. One moment he would be affectionate and apologetic, promising to do better, and the next he would explode over the smallest perceived slight. Camille's sister, Leah, noticed the changes during a FaceTime call. Camille looked exhausted. Her usual vibrant energy dimmed. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her smile seemed forced. "Are you okay?" Leah asked directly. "You don't seem like yourself." "I'm fine," Camille lied, glancing over her shoulder to make sure Lucas wasn't nearby. "Just tired. The business has been demanding." "Is Lucas treating you well?" Leah pressed. "You can tell me if something's wrong." Camille's throat tightened. For a moment, she considered telling her sister everything, but then she thought about how it would sound, how everyone would judge her for staying with him, how they would say they told her so. She couldn't bear that. "He's wonderful," she said firmly. "We're very happy." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. 3 months into the marriage, Camille barely recognized her own life. The woman who had once proudly displayed her independence and success now walked on eggshells in her own home. Every decision required Lucas's approval. Every outfit was scrutinized. Every conversation was monitored. Lucas had stopped even pretending to look for work. He spent his days moving between the couch and the bedroom, emerging only to eat, smoke, or start arguments. The drugs had become a constant presence. Camille found baggies of pills she didn't recognize hidden in coat pockets and dresser drawers. When she confronted him, Lucas became violent in ways that stopped just short of physical assault. He would punch walls instead of her face. He would throw objects that landed inches from where she stood. He would grab her arm hard enough to leave bruises, then apologize profusely, claiming he didn't know his own strength. Each time, Camille told herself it could have been worse. Each time, she convinced herself that staying was the right choice because leaving felt impossible. The financial strain was mounting. Lucas had maxed out the credit card Camille had given him within 3 weeks, spending thousands on clothes, electronics, and drugs. When Camille canceled the card, he raged for hours, accusing her of trying to control him, of treating him like a child. She gave him cash instead, hoping it would be easier to manage. But the cash disappeared just as quickly, and Lucas always demanded more. Belle Mode Boutique was still profitable, but Camille's focus had fractured. She missed meetings with suppliers, forgot to respond to customer inquiries, and made careless inventory mistakes that cost her money. Her online presence had become sporadic and carefully sanitized. The vibrant, confident businesswoman her followers had admired was fading, replaced by someone who seemed diminished and uncertain. Emma had stopped trying to talk to her mother about Lucas. The conversations always ended the same way, with Camille defending him and Emma retreating to her room in frustration. Instead, Emma focused on her own life, spending as much time as possible at friends' houses or at school activities. She couldn't bear to watch her mother's slow destruction. But Emma wasn't the only one who noticed. Camille's mother, who had suffered a stroke 2 years earlier and required frequent care, had become increasingly concerned. During one of Camille's visits, she gripped her daughter's hand with her good arm and spoke with difficulty. "Not right," she managed to say, her words slurred but her meaning clear. "Him. Not right." Camille smiled and patted her mother's hand. "Everything's fine, Mama. Lucas is just adjusting. It takes time." Her mother's eyes filled with frustration and fear, but her limited speech prevented her from saying more. Camille left feeling guilty, but she pushed the feeling down. She couldn't abandon Lucas. She had made a commitment. She had stood by him through prison, through his release, through everything. She couldn't give up now. The first time Lucas hit her was on a Tuesday evening in late September. Camille had come home from the boutique excited about a potential partnership with a local fashion blogger who had a large following. The collaboration could significantly expand her business, and she was eager to share the news. But when she walked into the house, she found Lucas going through her purse. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Lucas looked up, his eyes glazed and unfocused. He had been using something stronger than marijuana. "Where's the rest of the money?" he demanded. "What money?" Camille asked, confusion mixing with rising alarm. "Don't play stupid," Lucas snarled. "I know you made a big sale today. I saw it on your business account. Where's the cash?" "That money is for inventory," Camille explained, trying to keep her voice calm. "I have to order new stock. I can't just take it out." "It's my money too," Lucas insisted, advancing toward her. "We're married. What's yours is mine." "That's not how it works," Camille said, taking a step back. "The business is separate. We talked about this." The slap came so fast she didn't see it coming. The force of it knocked her sideways, and she stumbled against the kitchen counter, her hand flying to her burning cheek. For a moment there was absolute silence. Then Lucas seemed to realize what he had done. "Baby, I'm sorry," he said immediately, his voice shifting to desperate pleading. "I didn't mean it. You just made me so angry." "Why do you have to make me angry?" Camille touched her face, feeling the heat of the impact, the sharp sting of broken skin where his ring had caught her cheekbone. She looked at Lucas, and in that moment, she saw him clearly. The man she had loved, the man she had waited for, no longer existed. In his place was someone dangerous. But instead of leaving, instead of calling the police, instead of doing any of the rational things she should have done, Camille heard herself say, "It's okay. I forgive you." Lucas pulled her into his arms, and she let him. He cried against her shoulder, promising it would never happen again, swearing he would get clean, vowing to be better. And Camille, trapped in the web of her own loyalty and exhaustion, believed him because the alternative was too terrifying to consider. The hitting didn't stop. It happened again the following week, and then 3 days after that. Each time Lucas apologized. Each time Camille forgave him. She started wearing more makeup to cover the bruises, choosing outfits with long sleeves even as California headed into its warmest months. She made excuses when friends asked about the marks they could see. She had bumped into a door, fallen down the stairs, tripped over something in the dark. One afternoon, while sorting through inventory at the boutique, Camille found herself crying without really knowing why. Her assistant, a young woman named Sophia, noticed and approached cautiously. "Mrs. Moreau, are you all right?" Sophia asked gently. Camille wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm fine, just stressed." Sophia hesitated, then said quietly, "My aunt was in a bad situation once. If you ever need help, if you ever need somewhere to go, I can give you resources." Camille looked at Sophia, seeing the concern in her young face, and felt a wave of shame wash over her. "I appreciate that," she said stiffly, "but I'm fine, really." That evening, Camille called her sister Leah. They talked about nothing important for a while, just catching up on family news and daily life. Then, in the middle of a sentence about Emma's college applications, Camille said something that made Leah go silent. "I feel like I'm going to die." The words had come out of nowhere, surprising Camille as much as they surprised Leah. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What did you just say?" Leah asked carefully. Camille laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Nothing. Forget it. I'm just tired. I've been working too much." "Camille, that's not nothing," Leah pressed. "Why would you say that?" "I don't know," Camille admitted. "It just came out. I'm fine. Everything's fine." But everything was not fine, and deep down, Camille knew it. October arrived with unseasonable heat, and with it came Camille's 36th birthday. Leah had insisted on organizing a small celebration at a local restaurant, inviting close family and a few of Camille's longtime friends. Camille had tried to decline, claiming she was too busy with the boutique, but Leah wouldn't take no for an answer. "You deserve to celebrate," Leah had said firmly over the phone. "You work yourself to death. One night out won't kill you." The words hung in the air with unintended weight. Lucas had been sullen about the party from the moment he heard about it. He didn't like Camille's friends, claimed they looked down on him, whispered about him behind his back. He especially didn't like Leah, who made no effort to hide her disapproval of him. "Do I have to go?" Lucas asked the morning of the party, his tone petulant. "It's my birthday," Camille said quietly. "I'd like you there." Lucas shrugged, turning his attention back to his phone. "Fine, but I'm not staying long." The restaurant Leah had chosen was warm and intimate, with string lights and candles on every table. About 15 people had gathered, including Emma, who had come reluctantly at her aunt's insistence. Camille arrived wearing a new dress she had pulled from the boutique's inventory, her makeup carefully applied to conceal the fading bruise on her cheekbone. Lucas arrived separately, 20 minutes late, and immediately the atmosphere shifted. He moved through the space with barely contained hostility, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for threats. He had been using something before he arrived. Camille could tell by the way his pupils were dilated, by the slight tremor in his hands. Dinner was tense. Lucas barely touched his food, instead drinking heavily and making occasional cutting remarks that only Camille seemed to fully understand. When Leah proposed a toast to her sister's success and resilience, Lucas's face darkened. "To Camille," Leah said, raising her glass, "the strongest woman I know. You've built an empire, you've raised an amazing daughter, and you've overcome every obstacle life has thrown at you. We're all so proud of you." Everyone clinked glasses and drank, everyone except Lucas. "Strongest woman," he muttered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "That's one way to put it." Camille's friend Josephine, who was sitting across from Lucas, frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lucas looked up, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "Nothing. Just funny how everyone acts like she's so perfect when she's really just a control freak who needs to have everything her way." The table went silent. Camille felt her face burning with humiliation. "Lucas, please," she said softly. "Please what?" Lucas challenged, his voice rising. "Please keep pretending everything's great. Please keep letting you make me look like an idiot." "Nobody's making you look like anything," Leah interjected coldly. "You're doing that all by yourself." Lucas stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm out of here. You people are all the same. You think you're better than me because I did time. You think Camille's some kind of saint for sticking with me. Well, maybe you should ask her what really goes on in our house. Lucas, sit down, Camille pleaded, standing as well. She reached for his arm, but he jerked away from her. Don't touch me, he snapped. I'm leaving. You can stay here with your fake friends and your perfect little life. He stormed out of the restaurant, leaving shocked silence in his wake. Camille stood frozen for a moment, torn between following him and staying with her family. Finally, she grabbed her purse. I'm sorry, she said to no one in particular. I have to go. Thank you for the party. Camille, wait, Leia called, but Camille was already heading for the door. She found Lucas in the parking lot, pacing beside their car and talking rapidly to himself. When he saw her, his expression shifted between rage and something that looked almost like fear. They're all against me, he said, his words tumbling over each other. They're trying to turn you against me. They're setting me up. Nobody's setting you up, Camille said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the anxiety coursing through her. You're paranoid. What did you take tonight? Don't try to make this about drugs, Lucas shot back. This is about respect. This is about you making me look weak in front of everyone. They argued in the parking lot for another 10 minutes before Camille finally convinced him to get in the car. She drove them home in silence, Lucas staring out the window and occasionally muttering to himself. When they arrived at the house, he went straight to the bedroom and locked the door. Camille sat alone in the living room, her birthday ruined, her relationship strained, her life unraveling. She pulled out her phone and texted Leia. I'm so sorry about tonight. He's going through something. Please don't worry about me. Leia's response came immediately. I am worried about you. He's dangerous, Camille. You need to leave him. Camille stared at the message for a long time before typing, I can't. I love him. But even as she sent it, she wasn't sure if it was true anymore. Did she love Lucas? Or was she just trapped by the weight of her own loyalty, by the years she had invested, by the fear of admitting she had made a terrible mistake? The following days were eerily quiet. Lucas alternated between apologizing for his behavior at the party and blaming Camille for provoking him. He claimed her family had always hated him, that they had poisoned her against him from the beginning. He insisted that if she truly loved him, she would cut them off, prove her loyalty by choosing him over them. Camille didn't cut them off, but she did start avoiding their calls. She couldn't bear to hear the concern in their voices, the carefully worded questions about her well-being, the unspoken plea for her to leave. It was easier to pretend everything was fine, to maintain the illusion a little longer. On October 23rd, 2 days before her death, Camille had lunch with her mother. The older woman had made some progress since her stroke, though her speech remained limited and her right side partially paralyzed. She studied her daughter's face with sharp, worried eyes. Afraid? She managed to say, gripping Camille's hand with surprising strength. What are you afraid of, Mama? Camille asked gently. Her mother shook her head, frustrated by her inability to communicate clearly. You, she finally forced out. You afraid? Camille felt tears prick her eyes. She wanted to deny it, to reassure her mother that everything was fine. But sitting there, holding her mother's hand, she found she couldn't lie anymore. Yes, she whispered. I'm afraid. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. With great effort, she said, Leave. Him. Camille nodded, not trusting herself to speak. But even as she made that small gesture of agreement, she knew she wouldn't leave. She couldn't explain why, not even to herself. Some combination of shame, hope, and exhaustion kept her tethered to Lucas despite every rational part of her brain screaming that she needed to run. That evening, she called Leia. They talked about ordinary things for a while. And then, just like before, Camille said something that sent chills down her sister's spine. I really feel like I'm going to die soon. Leia's breath caught. Camille, you said that before. What do you mean? Are you sick? No, Camille said, her voice eerily calm. I'm not sick. I just have this feeling like something bad is coming. Then leave. Leah urged desperately. "Pack a bag and leave tonight. Come stay with me. Bring Emma. Just get out of that house." "I can't," Camille said simply. "Not yet." "Why not?" Leah demanded. "What are you waiting for?" Camille didn't have an answer. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Leah sat staring at her phone, dread pooling in her stomach. She thought about calling the police, about staging an intervention, about driving to Camille's house and physically dragging her sister to safety. But she didn't do any of those things. She told herself Camille was just being dramatic, that things weren't really as bad as they seemed. She would regret that decision for the rest of her life. October 24th started like any other day, though later everyone would search for signs they had missed, warnings they had ignored. Camille opened Belmode Boutique at 10 in the morning, greeting her assistant Sophia with a tired smile. She had dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could fully hide. "Late night?" Sophia asked carefully. "Something like that," Camille replied, not elaborating. The day passed normally enough. Customers came and went. Camille processed orders, answered emails, and posted a few carefully neutral updates on the boutique's Instagram account. Nothing about her personal life. Nothing that might trigger Lucas's jealousy. Just products and prices safe and sanitized. Around 3 in the afternoon, she texted Emma, "What do you want for dinner tonight, sweetheart?" Emma was at school, preparing for a chemistry exam. She saw the message but didn't respond immediately, planning to reply later when she had more time. It was a decision that would haunt her. At 4:30, Camille closed the boutique and headed home. She had promised to check on her mother that evening, and she wanted to change clothes first. When she pulled into the driveway of her house, she noticed Lucas's car was gone. A small wave of relief washed over her. Maybe he had finally gone to look for work, or maybe he was just out. Either way, a few hours without walking on eggshells sounded like heaven. But Lucas wasn't out looking for work. He was at his father's apartment in the Riverside Gardens complex on the east side of Sacramento, a low-income housing area that Lucas had grown up in. His father, Hugo Moreau, lived alone in a small 2-bedroom unit, and Lucas had been spending increasing amounts of time there, away from Camille's watchful eyes. What happened over the next few hours remains partially unclear, pieced together from phone records, surveillance footage, and the fragmented statements Lucas would later give to police. What is certain is that at some point that evening, Camille drove to Riverside Gardens. Whether she went there looking for Lucas, whether he called and asked her to come, or whether they had arranged to meet remains a subject of speculation. Emma got home from school around 6 and found the house empty. She texted her mother, "Where are you?" No response. She tried calling. The phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. Emma frowned but wasn't immediately worried. Her mother was often busy, often forgot to check her phone when she was dealing with business matters or caring for her grandmother. But as the hours passed and Camille still didn't respond, Emma's concern grew. At 8 o'clock, she called again. No answer. She texted Leah, "Have you heard from Mom?" She's not answering. Leah tried calling Camille. Nothing. She told Emma to stay calm, that Camille probably just had her phone on silent, but Leah felt the cold fingers of dread creeping up her spine, remembering her sister's words from just 2 days earlier. "I feel like I'm going to die." By 10 o'clock, Emma was genuinely frightened. She called her Uncle Nathan, Camille's brother, who lived 30 minutes away. "Something's wrong," she told him, her voice shaking. "Mom always answers. She always tells me where she is. This isn't like her." Nathan and his girlfriend Clara immediately drove to Camille's house. By the time they arrived at 11, Emma was crying, and Leah was on her way from San Jose, making the 2-hour drive while her mind raced through increasingly terrible scenarios. They tried tracking Camille's phone, but it appeared to be turned off, or dead. They called hospitals, thinking perhaps there had been an accident. Nothing. Finally, Nathan called Lucas. The phone rang several times before Lucas answered, his voice thick and strange. "Have you seen Camille?" Nathan demanded. "Emma's been trying to reach her all evening." There was a pause, too long, too heavy. Then Lucas said, No, I haven't seen her since this morning. Where are you? Nathan asked. At my dad's place, Lucas replied. Why? What's going on? Camille's missing, Nathan said, hearing the accusation in his own voice. Her daughter can't find her. She's not answering her phone. You don't know where she is? I told you I haven't seen her, Lucas insisted. Maybe she's with one of her friends. Maybe she just needed space. The conversation ended badly, with Nathan not believing a word Lucas said, and Lucas defensive and evasive. Nathan immediately called the police to file a missing person report, but he was told that adults needed to be missing for 24 hours before an official search could begin, unless there was evidence of foul play. She's in danger, Nathan tried to explain. Her husband is violent. She told us she felt like she was going to die. The dispatcher took down the information but said there was little they could do until morning. She suggested they continue searching on their own, checking with friends and family, retracing Camille's likely routes. By midnight, a dozen family members and friends had joined the search. They drove through Sacramento's streets, checking parking lots, hospitals, anywhere Camille might be. Leah arrived and immediately took charge, her criminal justice training kicking in despite her emotional state. We need to find her car, Leah said. If we find her car, we find her. They started with Riverside Gardens, the last place they knew Lucas had been. It was nearly 1 a.m. when they found Camille's silver Mercedes parked in a shadowy corner of the complex, hidden partially behind a dumpster. The car was locked, but when they shone their phone flashlights through the windows, they saw something that made Leah's blood run cold. A large handprint smeared on the driver's side window, dark and unmistakable. That's blood, Leah whispered. Nathan tried the door handles, but everything was locked. He called the police again, this time insisting they send someone immediately. While they waited, Leah walked the perimeter of the complex, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was a small creek behind the buildings, choked with trash and weeds. She started to move toward it, some instinct pulling her in that direction. That's when Emma, who had been refreshing local news sites compulsively on her phone, gasped. Aunt Leah, she called out, her voice breaking. There's a post on Sacramento Crime Watch. A woman's body was found on Melinda Lane, shot. Melinda Lane was less than half a mile from where they were standing. Nobody spoke. They all stood frozen, understanding before they understood, knowing before they knew. Then, as a unit, they ran for their cars. The scene on Melinda Lane was chaos. Police cars, ambulances, crime scene tape, everything illuminated by harsh portable lights. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors drawn by the commotion. Leah pushed through, Nathan and Emma close behind. That's my sister's car at Riverside Gardens, Leah said to the first officer she found. We're looking for her. Is the victim? Can you tell me? The officer's face was carefully neutral. I need you to describe your sister. Leah did, her voice mechanical, listing physical characteristics like she was reading from a report and not describing the woman who had been her best friend, her confidant, her sister. When she finished, the officer's expression shifted to something like sympathy. I'm going to need you to wait here, he said gently. 10 minutes later, a detective approached them. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at them with the practiced compassion of someone who had delivered bad news too many times. Then he nodded once, a small movement that confirmed everything. Emma collapsed. Nathan caught her. Leah stood perfectly still, feeling like she was watching the scene from outside her own body. Around them, other family members who had gathered began to wail, their grief spilling out into the early morning air. Camille Laurent, aged 35, successful businesswoman, devoted mother, loyal sister, had been shot once in the chest and left on the side of the road like garbage. The man who had killed her, the man she had stood by through imprisonment and struggle and everything in between, had driven away and left her to die alone. The investigation moved quickly once Camille's body was identified. Sacramento Police Department homicide detectives arrived at the scene on Melinda Lane within the hour, and by dawn, they had established a clear timeline of events. Surveillance footage from Riverside Gardens showed Camille's Mercedes arriving at 7:15 that evening. Camille could be seen walking from her car toward one of the buildings, presumably going to find Lucas. At 7:42, the same cameras captured Lucas's vehicle, a dark blue Ford sedan registered in Camille's name, leaving the complex at high speed. The driver was clearly Lucas, his face visible in the footage. What the cameras didn't show was what happened in between, the confrontation that ended with a bullet in Camille's chest. Detectives obtained a search warrant for Lucas's vehicle and found it abandoned 3 blocks from his father's apartment. Inside, the evidence was damning. Blood spatter on the passenger seat and door, a spent 9mm shell casing on the floor, and most tellingly, one of Camille's shoes, a designer sandal she had been wearing when she left home that afternoon. The other shoe was still on her foot when her body was found. The forensic team also found a handgun stuffed under the driver's seat, registered to neither Lucas nor Camille. Later ballistics testing would confirm it was the murder weapon. How Lucas had obtained the gun remained unclear, though investigators suspected he had purchased it illegally shortly after his release from prison. But Lucas himself had vanished. When police went to Hugo Moreau's apartment, they found the older man alone and genuinely shocked by what had happened. Hugo insisted he had been asleep when Lucas arrived that evening, had heard nothing unusual, and had no idea his son was capable of such violence. Whether that was entirely true would remain an open question. For the next 3 days, Lucas was a ghost. Police issued a warrant for his arrest, circulated his photo to media outlets, and set up surveillance on locations he was known to frequent. Camille's family held a vigil that drew hundreds of people, friends and customers and community members who had been touched by Camille's generosity and spirit. Emma stood at the center, accepting condolences she was too numb to really process. "I should have made her leave," Leah said over and over, her voice hollow. "I should have forced her. I should have done something." "We all should have," Nathan replied, guilt eating at him. "We all saw the signs. We all knew something was wrong. But knowing and acting are different things, and they had all made the same mistake, assuming that Camille would eventually save herself, that her strength would carry her through, that love could somehow be enough." On October 27th, 3 days after the murder, police received a tip that Lucas had been spotted at a barber shop in Oak Park, a neighborhood on Sacramento's south side. Officers surrounded the location and found Lucas in the back room, getting his hair cut as if he were just another customer with nothing to hide. He didn't resist arrest. When officers announced themselves and ordered him to the ground, Lucas simply raised his hands and complied. He seemed almost relieved, as if the weight of what he had done had become too heavy to carry alone. At the police station, Lucas waived his right to remain silent and gave a statement that was both confession and justification. Yes, he had shot Camille. But he claimed he hadn't meant to kill her. He said they had been arguing in his car, that Camille had threatened to leave him, to cut him off financially, to have him sent back to prison for violating his parole with drug use. "She was trying to destroy me," Lucas told detectives, his voice flat. "Everything I did, she threw it in my face. How much money she made, how successful she was, how she didn't need me." "So you shot her," Detective Sarah Kendrick said, her tone neutral. Lucas's face crumpled. "I don't even remember pulling the trigger. I was high. I had taken some PCP earlier that day. Everything was fuzzy. I just remember being so angry, and then the gun was in my hand, and then there was blood everywhere. And then you drove away and left her on the side of the road," Kendrick continued. Lucas didn't answer that. He just stared at his hands, which were shaking. The PCP claim became central to Lucas's defense strategy. His court-appointed attorney would later argue that Lucas had been in a drug-induced psychosis, that he hadn't been in full control of his actions, that his judgment had been severely impaired. Medical experts would testify about the effects of PCP, how it could cause violent behavior, hallucinations, and a disconnection from reality. But prosecutors had a different narrative. They argued that Lucas had been planning this for weeks, if not months. The illegally obtained gun, the pattern of escalating abuse, the financial desperation as Camille began to pull away. The shooting wasn't a spontaneous act of drug-fueled rage. It was the inevitable conclusion of a toxic relationship, where one person held all the power and couldn't tolerate losing it. The trial wouldn't happen for more than a year, and the family would have to live with that uncertainty, that prolonged agony of waiting for justice that might never feel adequate. In the immediate aftermath, they focused on the practical matters. Emma moved in with Leah, unable to bear living in the house where her mother had spent her final days trying to make a failing marriage work. The house would eventually be sold, the proceeds put in trust for Emma's future. Belmode Boutique closed permanently, its inventory liquidated. The life Camille had built so carefully was dismantled piece by piece. Camille's mother, upon learning of her daughter's death, suffered another stroke. This one was massive and fatal. She died 2 weeks after Camille, and the family buried them together in a double funeral that felt impossibly cruel. Emma, at 17, had lost both her mother and grandmother in less than a month. The community response was overwhelming. Vigils were held, fundraisers were organized to help with funeral costs and to support Emma. Camille's story was shared across social media, not as she had shared it in life with carefully curated success posts, but as a cautionary tale about the dangers of staying with an abusive partner. "I just want people to know what really happened," Emma said in a television interview 6 months later, her face composed, but her eyes haunted. "My mom wasn't weak. She was one of the strongest people I knew, but he broke her down little by little until she couldn't see a way out. And I want other women who are in that situation to know there is always a way out. It's not too late until it's too late." Lucas Moreau was eventually charged with first-degree murder. His bail was set at $1 million, which he couldn't pay. He remained in Sacramento County Jail, awaiting trial. His defense team filed multiple motions, arguing diminished capacity due to drug use, requesting psychiatric evaluations, trying every legal maneuver to reduce the charges or secure a plea deal. The prosecution refused to negotiate. They wanted a murder conviction, and they believed they had the evidence to get it. As this story went to press, Lucas's trial date had been set for spring of the following year. The family prepared themselves for the ordeal of sitting through testimony, of hearing the details of Camille's final moments, of facing the man who had taken so much from them. "People ask me if I forgive him," Leah said, sitting in her living room where Emma now lived, surrounded by photos of Camille smiling, vibrant, alive. "And I don't know how to answer that. Camille forgave him for everything, over and over. She forgave him when he hit her, when he screamed at her, when he isolated her from everyone who loved her, and her forgiveness killed her." She paused, her jaw tight. "So no, I don't forgive him, and I never will. But I hope his story, and Camille's story, saves someone else. I hope another woman sees this and recognizes the pattern and gets out before it's too late." The truth is that Camille Laurent's death was both unique and tragically common. The specific details of her story, her success, her loyalty, her specific path to that roadside in Sacramento, those things were hers alone. But the pattern is repeated thousands of times each year. A woman trapped in an abusive relationship, isolated from support systems, convinced that love can overcome violence, staying until staying becomes fatal. Camille's story asks uncomfortable questions. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't her family intervene more forcefully? Why didn't the criminal justice system that had just released Lucas provide better monitoring or support for his reintegration? Why do we, as a society, still struggle to identify and interrupt domestic violence before it escalates to murder? There are no easy answers. There is only the painful reality of a life ended too soon, a daughter left motherless, a family shattered by preventable tragedy. Emma Laurent Moreau, now 18 and preparing to start college with scholarships established in her mother's name, has the final word. "My mom always said she could handle it. She always said love was enough. But it wasn't. And I want her legacy to be this. Love is not enough when someone is hurting you. Safety matters more than loyalty. Your life matters more than a relationship. If my mom's death can save even one person, then maybe, in some small way, it won't have been completely meaningless. The case continues. Justice, incomplete and imperfect, grinds forward. And Camille's name joins the too long list of women who loved dangerously and paid the ultimate price.